because that's the guy I am.
That's the kind of guy you are.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And I'm here with my friend Greg DeMarco. And today is the last time we're going to actually finish up the chapter on Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. So we're looking at chapter 10, and it's key insights into how connectors live and what they communicate. How are you doing, Greg?
I'm doing good. Don, thank you for asking. And yourself? Did you get enough sleep last night?
I did get enough sleep last night. My Fitbit watch rates my sleep.
Oh, and what did it tell you? Did it tell you how well you slept? Your Fitbit watch?
I haven't looked at it yet this morning, but
Yeah.
I don't actually know how to read it. I mean, I know it gives you a rating, and I'm thinking, okay, is that a good rating or a bad rating? I'm thinking, okay, 75% out of 100. To me, that's not great, but it's okay. Anyway, I don't know what criteria it uses for measuring whether or not my sleep was any good or not. People don't want to hear about my sleep habits. They want to hear about John Maxwell's book, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect, and how connectors live what they're communicating. We talk about that a lot, where in communication and in sales, authenticity is paramount. People ultimately follow what they see, not just what they hear.
That's a very good statement to make because I think that's to sum up the chapter or to hit on some very important points that John Maxwell was talking about, taking action, doing what you say you do, like walking their talk. And I think that the consistency in that build trust in yourself. If you're consistently saying, here's a good way to deal with this, and this is how I do it, and you take the action to actually do it, people are more able to trust you.
Basically, in the long term, people follow leaders or buy from people based on their trust and character.
Yeah. But I mean, this wraps into what he also talks about is being authentic, because if that's just not you as a person, then you're going to fail dismally. But I think that if you are authentic, and I think that he stresses this quite a bit about, that's essential in building the trust that we want to build with people. And I think it all comes down to that. And we've talked about this several times on this podcast, is that trust is the number one key. So how do you get that trust? And authenticity is definitely one way, but taking action on what you say you're going to do is another, because that's what the consistency is, right?
Yeah, typically people are pretty good at recognizing people that are authentic,
Yeah.
and I mean, you're not really fooling somebody, most of the time. Maybe some of the time you can, but not most
Well,
of the
no,
time.
because I think that if you keep talking about it, and I've been guilty of it myself, because I went through this phase this past year where, I was trying to nail down and hone in on what it is exactly that I wanted to do with the specific thing. And you can talk and you can talk and you can get advice and you can get advice, but if eventually you don't start taking action on it, then um, that's what happens. I think you just sort of let go of what it is you're trying to accomplish, and nobody's going to trust you.
I was going through some my Kindle book library actually, and I found this book that I had kind of bought and put aside. But the title of the book is kind of interesting. It says, "Do what you are, discover the perfect career for you through the secrets of your personality type." And I mean, we talked about that I do the personality thing, with the disc. This book was actually written with the idea of Myers-Briggs. And I think it's interesting, that when we're authentic, when we're authentically doing what we are made to do, we're much better at what we do. We might not be great at it, yet, but I think that if it's something that if it's something that we were actually designed to accomplish, then it's going to be easier for us to be authentic, when we're actually doing that, doing that role, playing that role.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that's a very good point. And I think that, listen, in the end, for me, I think that, this chapter, the connectors live what they communicate. I mean, that's the main key. And I think that oftentimes, and I have been associated and working with organizations that seemingly lived that motto, but in the end, it just uh, totally demoralized me because I was part of this, what I thought this strong organization was. And it turns out they weren't living what they communicated. And that bothers me to no end. That's something to me that is so hypocritical, yet they can't recognize it in themselves. And it's sad. The problem is they start having a lot of followers who don't recognize it either, but they think they're just living this dream. And to me, it's just hypocrisy. But
Yeah.
I think that, in the end, for me, uh, being authentic is critical, but it's consistency that wins the day. And if you're transparent, there's also this thing they talk about called vulnerability. And what that means is I'm not talking about people giving up their deepest, darkest skeletons in the bottom of the closet that they buried there 50 years ago. I'm talking about just being honest and authentic with people and, you know, owning what you need to own and basically living what you say you're going to do. And I think that is extremely important for leaders or people in sales, if that's what we're going to narrow this down to, is that if they say they're going to do something, they do it. So if you say you're going to follow up with somebody on Friday at 2 p.m., then you need to do it. And you really need to look at what it is your intentionality is there. And, let's face the facts. In some of our industries, I don't know how prevalent it is in the real estate industry, but certainly in other industries, salespeople rely a lot on the back office for support. And I'm just going to put this out there. Sometimes support lacks and you make promises and it's somebody else's job to follow through. And that happens. You can't blame the back office. You got to take it in yourself and you've got to rectify it. But that's what we work in a part of a team, it's a team effort, and we have to, band together and provide the best service that we can. And sometimes it's not, it's another part that fails, but you still have to own that and move forward with it.
Yeah. When you're in sales, you're not just doing the part that you're directly involved in.
Mm-hmm.
You're part of the whole process. You're responsible for that whole process and taking or accepting responsibility for that whole process, and the end result is something that I think we're required to do.
Yeah.
And in real estate, it becomes very it's very critical that you do that. If I say something that I don't follow through on, and it ends up harming my client, I mean, they have recourse that can be quite expensive.
Well, you see, that's why I said I don't know what it's like in the real estate industry,
Well,
but that's true. That's why I was hoping you'd say something because, I mean, the reality is that's what happens. It's not always, just us where, we have to own it though, because we're the front line. You can't, the worst thing to do is to say, oh, Betty in the back office there didn't send it through. What an idiot. You don't do that.
You don't throw Betty under the bus.
No,
right?
you don't, because you're throwing yourself under the bus and and that does not build trust in the client because they're looking at you going, listen, I don't give I don't care what's going on back there. You're the one who said this was going to get done.
Yeah. That's I think an important thing is, and you don't throw Betty under the bus. You basically say, hey, that's not supposed to happen. I'm going to make sure that this gets fixed right away. And
that's the best. You're right. Bang on there. I'm glad you said that. That is the best way to handle it.
Yeah. I think it's important for, to look at it and say, okay, that when you take responsibility and take the action, you're building character, you're following through, you're following through. And basically that's what we're talking about is when we say that connectors live what they communicate, that's their communication is what they say. And so if you don't follow through on that, you're not authentic. You're not being authentic. You're not building trust. You're not, you're destroying your integrity.
Yeah.
You know, I want to make this a little bit more personal too, Greg, not to you or me, because we would never do these kind of things that I'm going to talk about. Well, maybe we would. For sure we would. One of the things, if I said I had let me put this a different way. I was in a meeting and the speaker was speaking, and he said, how many of you and it was a room of realtors. So this was an important question. He said, how many of you realtors would say that you have integrity? So 100% of us put up our hands, right? Who wants to be in a room where somebody says, do you have integrity? And you don't put up your hand, right? So for sure, I put up my hand. Yes, I have integrity. And then he asked a question. He says, have you ever canceled an appointment you made with yourself, or not shown up to an appointment you made for yourself? And I thought, wow, like, when I have integrity, am I talking about just integrity with other people, or am I talking also about integrity that I have with myself? We talk about walking the walk, but am I integrous with how I treat myself? And I think I would have to say a big fat no there for me. 'Cause-
You'd have to say a big fat no, would you?
yeah.
That's a really good question, Don.
Or
I
make it even more personal. Have you ever had a date with your wife, and then something at work came up, and you didn't, and you just said, I can't make the date with my wife, right? Or your girlfriend or your significant other or your kids, same idea.
It is, and it's a good question, but, I guess if we're all being honest, I think that's true. But I think that, it leads to this thing that Maxwell was talking about, which is credibility. And it comes down to your character, right? And that is a great question when you ask everybody, do you think you have integrity? And then you throw a question like that because you realize, what does it mean? What does integrity mean? And you have to define that for yourself.
Well, we can maybe think that there's degrees of integrity,
Yeah.
so, and I think we do ourselves a disservice when we're not integrous, in how we treat ourselves. You know, um, if I treat someone else better than I treat myself, or if I treat my client better than I treat my children or my grandchildren or my wife or my, whoever, like people that are close to me, if I treat clients better than my family or people that are important to me, am I really walking the walk? You know, um, and
But you're
those are
not
hard.
though, really, are you?
Well, you're not. No, you're not walking the walk. No, I mean,
Because what people say to themselves is, and we're getting into a philosophical conversation, but what people say to themselves is, it's okay because it's me. And, as long as I treat everybody else well. But what they fail to understand is their integrity only goes so far, you know?
yeah, it's
And
like
that's a
it's
hard one for people to understand because no, and let's face the facts. Everybody wants to be integrous,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, sometimes it's harder than it. It's easy to think that we want to be, but what are some steps that you have to do to actually be integrous? To have that character that we're talking about. What would be some tips that you could give to somebody that would help them do that?
Well, first one is what we already talked about. If you're going to say you're going to do something, do it. Take action and actually do it. So if you're going to tell somebody that you're going to do whatever, follow up, let's use the example of following up on Friday at noon, then make sure you do it. If you've got an appointment with somebody at 11 a.m. on Tuesday and you say you're going to be there, then you be there.
And don't be there at 11:01.
That's right. That's true. Don't be there at 11:01. Be there at 10:55
Yeah.
so that you can shove it in their face when they didn't send you the link to get in there on time.
There you go. There you go.
Oh, that's funny.
And
I'm just gently jabbing you.
we won't go any further on that comment.
I'm kidding, but the truth of the matter is that's one very big tip is if you say you're going to do something, and I do believe this, and I think that all of us have sometimes falter on this, and then you got to ask yourself why. But the reality is if you say you're going to do something, you need to do it. And that's where your trust starts and you get consistent. People know that you're reliable, that when you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it. And so that when that time comes, when something screws up and it falters, it inevitably is going to do that. I don't care what industry you're in. People will trust that you'll fix it.
I mean, in sales, it's not always a smooth ride, right? Depending on what you're selling. I know in real estate, it's not always, the transaction isn't always smooth. So, even after you've negotiated the deal, there's things that are going to come up. There's things that are going to come up, and you're going to have to figure out how to navigate around them. And if you have character, it's much easier to do than if you don't, than if you're trying to slide by with, by being less than integrous, I want to go back to the idea of arriving on time. It reminded me of a statement that the great Vince Lombardi, and anybody that's our age would remember who Vince Lombardi was. Other people wouldn't. It's the Lombardi trophy is the trophy that is what they call the Super Bowl. So that he was in football and he was the coach of the Green Bay Packers in the 60s. And he said, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. If you're late, don't even bother showing up. Apparently being fashionably late is not cool. So do you show up to events early, late, or on time? So I think that's kind of an old value that maybe is not as demonstrated as much as in today's world as it used to be. But
I think you're right. I think, you have to question what's going on with yourself if you're not on top of certain things. Like, how seriously are you taking it? And what do you need to do to change that if you want to change? And the reality, I think that's what happens. And it's the impact, and Maxwell gets into this too, where he starts to talk about the impact of communication. It's true.
Yeah. I mean, showing up on time is only one area that we can demonstrate our character. But when I don't show up on time, I'm saying that I don't value your time as much as I value myself.
And you're right. You're absolutely right. 100%.
Yeah. And that's, so forgive me for being 1 minute late today.
Forgive me for being completely late the whole hour the other day. So, but you're right. And that's right. And Don and I are obviously, jabbing at each other here. Some things happened in the podcast that sort of relates to this chapter directly. And, but it's true. And I think you have to ask the question is, how does the impact of your actions affect your communication?
I think that it's not only the impact of our actions, I think starts with us, with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We have to treat ourselves with integrity. We have to treat ourselves with character, and respect and value who we are as people. I think if we want to expect others to see us in the same way. And if I don't see myself that way, how am I going to see other people? Am I going to see them? Do I see another person as somebody that is important, that has value, or do I see them as a transaction?
That's a good point. That is a very good point right there. Do you see the other person? That's important. Let's just focus on that for a second, because do you see the person do you see that as having value? Like, do you value them enough to show up on time and to give your 100%? Or do you see it as a transaction? That is really good, because that goes back to your own individual intentionality. Is this just a paycheck to you, or is this you actually caring about that person?
Caring about the result,
Yeah.
what impact are you going to have in their life? Now, if you're selling them, if you're a clerk, anywhere we are, anywhere we go, we can have an impact in somebody's life, and I think if we walk with that kind of an attitude, I think I think it becomes evident that that's the way that on how we treat people. And, maybe it's not directly related to, the comment, or the title of this, where, connectors live what they communicate. But I think it is, in that it's when I, uh, if I say that I treat my customers, like, what salesman's going to say that they treat their customers like crap? I mean, no one's going to say that, right? So, but if I say that I'm going to I treat my customers as, like my family, but then I treat my family like crap, you know,
Yeah,
what
exactly. But
what am I saying?
that's exactly what we're talking about, though.
Yeah. So, when I walk, when I'm walking, when I'm meeting people, when I'm greeting people, am I looking at them and saying, okay, I might not have a big impact, but I can have a much better impact if I walk past somebody and I smile at them in the morning and say, "Good morning. How are you doing today?" I mean, most of the time, people I do that intentionally. Sometimes my wife thinks I'm weird for doing it, but when we're walking around the lake, I like to smile and say hello to people. They're walking around like, just trying to, and you say, "Hi, how you doing? Good morning." "Good morning, good morning." And they say, "Oh yeah, good morning." Yeah, yeah. But you've made an impact maybe, and uh, where somebody said, okay, somebody acknowledged that I was a human being, that I was, on their path, today. So,
Well,
uh,
that's interaction, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's actually us interacting with other people, and they may be in a trance. They may have just woken up. They may be in a bad mood. Who knows? But I like that
they may be
because I
deep
do
in
the
thought.
same thing. Uh,
Yeah, no, I do it too. I'm probably the worst for it. I told the story of the time that I was at the mall waiting for I had ordered something at the food court at the mall. And I was just standing there, and then I got my food and I sat down, and the guy comes and stands at the table right in front of me. Eyes were wide open, just bulging like this, and says, "You got a problem with me?" And I said, like, "What?" Like, "Do you have a problem with me?" And then he said, "No." And he says, "You're giving me the evil eye." But it was me. I was lost in thought, and I didn't realize that I
yeah,
got my wonky eye, that points off to here. And he thought I was being disrespectful to him,
yeah,
where I was glaring at him. So it was, but we can get lost in our thoughts and be oblivious, be oblivious to people around us. And I think that, just being aware that there's other people in the room, you know, um, and that we can have an impact in their life, can
yeah,
be a way that we show people that we're authentic in how we treat people.
yeah. I mean, I think people get distracted sometimes. I mean, I think sometimes we do get a little too hard on ourselves about it because I think we have to realize that sometimes we get distracted and things go on in our lives. And I think if we're with friends and family and people we care about, then we should be, sensitive to that and be able to say, "Hey, is everything okay?" But, that happens. But the reality is, I think that what we all need to do is exercise some intentionality towards it. What kind of value are we showing that we have for people that we're with, by either being late or on time, and just the actions that we take, uh, when we say we're going to do something. I think that's critical. I just think that I think John Maxwell, really hit it out of the ballpark with the, it all, to me, it all comes down to trust. How are you building that trust, and how are you, it's not just building it though. In the end, it's about how consistent are you with it? Because you can build trust and all of a sudden, okay, well, yeah, I'm complacent now and it's done.
Like that, it's done, gone.
Yeah. I've got what I wanted. And you just basically showed them that, okay, you were trustworthy, and then you got what you wanted, and then you left, you know?
Yeah.
That doesn't garner in sales. That certainly won't get you repeat business,
Repeats or referrals. And that's, those
which
are
is
the best kind.
critical for the real estate industry, I understand.
Yeah.
And I think it's critical for a lot of other industries. It
Sure.
was in the boat business. There was nothing better than someone coming up to me, "Hey, my buddy John, recommended you. You just sold him, a 25-foot bow rider, whatever. And, he said, 'Come talk to you.'" Perfect.
You love those calls, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And even in the furniture business, working in that, it's nice when, you have people coming back. It starts to get slow, and then you have people coming back to say, "Okay, yeah, let's do this." From 2 weeks ago or a month ago, then when you talk to them, they're ready to buy. So,
I know in real estate, when one of the things that generates activity in the economy faster than anything is when people buy a house. I don't know what the number is today, but long time ago, when $10,000 and $15,000 was really a lot of money, um, that was the average of what a person spent when they bought it. How much money went to the economy. So I mean, we refer plumbers, we refer furniture salespeople, we refer lawyers, we refer painters, decorators, carpet people, all these different kinds of things. And if I refer somebody to one of my clients and they have a bad experience, you think I'm going to refer them again?
mm,
Anyway, that's another topic. We've been talking today about John Maxwell's chapter 10 of his book, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect, and that connectors live what they communicate. And I've been with my friend Greg DeMarco, and we've been I think, a pretty good discussion here today, Greg.
yeah, I think it's
But thank you very much for your time, and I
Thank
look
you.
forward to our next talk.
Yep.
And don't forget to like and subscribe. We never say that.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. And if you have any questions, comment.